I work at the Kaiser Foundation. Urban playgrounds in urban spaces where activities are organized. And I see a parallel in the situation in Beirut because there you have also many organizations who don't work together as you like, maybe, as you want them to be. And in Holland at our playgrounds we have the same problem. You got youth workers, social workers, you got I don't know the English translation, sports leaders, or a bunch of guys and organizations who have their own identity, their own goals. And most of the times I see, maybe I'm a little bit old now, I'm a little bit pessimistic, that they don't cooperate in the way we like them to be and to do it. And we are now in the situation how to cope with that. Do we want to take control back and fund more money so we are more in control? Or can we let them be, or do we have to give a good example? Or it's a struggle, and it's similar maybe with the Ministry of Social Affairs, if we can compare ourselves with that. What is a good solution? What do they need to do?
Yeah,
because there's a lack of money, I think.
Yeah, there is a lack of money, and Lebanon is going through, major borrowing now, something like $11 billion to try to compensate, and maybe also some of this money would be given to Lebanon, because actually they want us to avoid falling within a really open crisis. Mm-hmm. Because then the Syrian refugees might be leaving Lebanon and fleeing towards Europe.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So again, you see that several parties have several interests into this, but I don't agree with you on one point. The difference is not, the situation is not comparable, because in the following sense, Lebanese state is weak, while it's not the case of the city. So you always have, I think, I don't know really the case of the Netherlands, but I feel that the state is strong in a way and implicated nevertheless, so it hasn't dismissed from its role and from its social role. Maybe it's changing a bit.
In a way it does now.
It's changing a little bit.
10, 20 years ago, the people, the social workers are civil servants, yep. And now they have their own company, or they're working for a social organization, okay. And they work in a contract which is given by the government or the city. Yeah, yes, but because they have their own organization, they have to create their own success and find data, so they can earn the money in the next year again. Yeah. And when they are a civil servant, they don't need to do that. They get their money and they're more cooperative in the first place. Yeah. So it's a bit of similar. It's changing and it's not for the good, I think.
Yeah.
But that's the case in the moment.
Yeah, but this is, similar to what's happening also in several European countries, where maybe the central state is a little bit disengaging from social services. So we're in the opposite situation. We're kind of idealistically still trying to imagine that at some point our state will gain more power and maybe better governance. But people like maybe Robert also, he will say, I'm taking his place, I'm sorry. So and I think also that we need to find other solution. We kind of, in our case, starting to lose hope that one day our institutions will really become strong. So trying to build for alternative solution, this is now the real challenge, how we can face that.
I have a bit of a very specific example. So I live with a lot of refugees. We have a couple of concepts in Amsterdam. It's called Startblok. So it's half of it is Dutch students, so from the age of 18 until 25 Dutch students, and then refugees with a legal, hoe heet dat dan, verblijfsvergunning?
Residents.
Yeah, residents, and they get like the other half of the studio apartments. So it was very with the thought in mind of connecting people, so that we have Syrian refugees, we have people from Sudan, from Eritrea, and the whole thought of it was we do a lot of group activities, and then it should work out. They get to know the Netherlands, perfect. But I live in the very first concept of it. There's a couple of them now, but we have 520 people. So half of them are refugees. And what I've been noticing recently is that the mental aspect of it has been brought down a lot. So
What do you mean?
I think that what has been showing up recently, to my understanding, is of course the Netherlands is very different. The whole of Europe is very different. But as soon as you have your residence here, the only way that you can get help is if you ask for it. But there has been, in the last 2 months, I think 2 Syrian boys have been taken into the hospital because something snapped. And a lot of them feel very isolated because they don't feel comfortable going outside and finding a normal regular job or anything like that. So I feel like the concept where I'm living right now is something that has been projected towards other people because they have a very nice story, but the reality of it is very different because it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. It's actually, I think it might be damaging in certain ways. So I am very into the whole community building idea, and I think it will help a lot. But I think it has to be very strict, and I think it's very important to keep in mind that there's a lot of damaged, mentally injured people involved. And I think that Lebanon in itself, of course, the war wasn't that long ago. Our war, it started 70 years ago, 80 years almost. That was our last proper war. That's not the right word, but And I think I feel like the mental aspect of it is not been taken into consideration enough. Because if you are mentally not working properly, and you're forced into a regular life, it's just a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
So I feel like there should be more focus on mental health. But in a country, of course, where you don't even get to the data, it feels very difficult, walking through mud, kind of,
Syrian refugees have endured a lot. They have endured a lot in their countries, but also I think that the situation that they're living, their daily life, for majority of them in Lebanon, is also very much difficult.
Yeah.
So the majority being placed in camps where social conditions are terrible, a lot of violence occurring inside the camps. Gender-related issues. Kids are faced with violence, internal violence even. So following the violence that they lived, they had to face in Syria, they're now going through the harsh moment in Lebanon. And lately, 2 weeks ago, even some incidents happened between some camps and the villages where they were, and the civil defense intervened, and they kind of started. So violence is kind of a little bit starting, or could start at any moment. Okay, so yes, the situation is and this aspect is not necessarily taken completely into account, as not being considered, and it's wrong, definitely, as being a priority, while it is, because what are we building in terms of future generation? It's going to be terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, and I always feel like it should be stable. If you start a new life, there should be a stability. And if it's such a rural area, there is no stability to start with.
Yeah. You had a response.
That's my very big concern. Okay, sorry.
It's not really a response to your talking, but what is the role of the social affairs in the camps? Do they coordinate it? Is there any role of the social affairs there? Is it just something for the international organizations?
No. I think it's going beyond their capacity. From the beginning, they had to we all admitted that it went beyond their capacity. So now, so it's So the intervention and the aid is either being implemented directly by those international agencies and organizations, and or channeled through local authorities, municipalities.
Just to
But
get a
ministry
feel,
also.
do you know by heart how many refugees we have here?
In Holland.
Yeah?
That's how you're counting it. We have 2 million migrants from the past decades, and most of them are legal or have some kind of status. And if I go from the figures from my part of the city, well, 200,000 illegal.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And but then, and the refugees from recently?
Well,
Well,
the blockade is
then-
working very well, so the numbers have dropped, also the Syrian numbers, and they have dropped very considerably the last year.
So we're talking about tens of thousands, a
Yeah.
few tens of thousands. And in Lebanon?
So there was a contestation about figures. Some figures say that it's 1,500,000, but last study done by Issam Faris Institute in UB 10 days ago, I think I read the figures, they put it much less. I forgot the exact figure, but even the figures of Syrian refugee is a reason of internal bickering, fight, and political recuperation in the country. So a lot of Lebanese were saying that they're causing harm to the Lebanese economy and that their number is huge and that there are problems of violence erupting due to them, while some studies that were done so within AUB University, so from Institute of Issam Faris, showed kind of re-questioned that. So the numbers wouldn't be necessarily the right, and we're even starting to talk that in some areas they do contribute positively to the economy. So again, you cannot take a topic like that and just see it from one lens. You need to really go in deep and try to understand it on several layers. Okay.
Okay, due to time.
Of pedagogy to the investigation of possible reconstruction design. So I don't think it will be of immediate interest to you, and I don't think I'll have enough time to really complete it. So I think that we don't have time, frankly. I need 15 to 20 minutes, and people need to leave. So let's let's spare you this.
I have a question about education. There was a talk about public schools, so maybe I know that it's also about segregation and fragmentation you talked about, and what's happening there. I know in the States the big driver for this development is that in rich areas you have rich schools, and in poor areas you have poor schools because of the way they are financed, the public schools. The strange effect here in Holland is that you can choose, as well I did, you can choose to live in a poor neighborhood under black people because you, if you want to, I didn't, but you can do, send your children to public schools outside the area. So you can, as some of my friends said, you don't have to put your children as a social experiment. So I'm interested how public schools have that function, or educational system has that function in Lebanon. Is that also very much rich areas, rich schools, rich kids, or is there some kind of integration or some kind of that they meet, that they learn, that they talk to each other? Or,
So my mom was a teacher at a public school. This is why I know just a little bit about that. And so during the 50s, 60s, there was a moment when public schools were kind of improving and progressing. And so the ideal of maybe trying to get some fair, let's say fair, learning within some of the public schools at least, seemed to be at reach and was happening, okay? But then again, due to several factors, I think some, if not most, of the public schools lost the momentum of this progress idea, and the difference between the private school, the private ones, and the public ones did increase. Okay, and you can feel it even more. So the public school located, for example, in rich areas, maybe do still operate in a better way than the one that are located in poor area. And another thing that needs to be considered is that private schools are not only private, sometimes, and in most cases, they do belong to communities, to religious communities. So also there you have different approach and understanding. So some of them are secular, some of them are kind of operated also with the help of foreign cultural centers like French schools and so on, but others are directly run by communities. Okay, and these are private schools, but also they tend, in some cases, more to address people not in relation to the area where they live, but to the community to which they belong. So it's not the same, we cannot map them in the same way and compare them in the same way we do with the Netherlands. It's not automatically directly linked to the region where you live and the category of school that you would access. But in general, all families that have the means to put their kids in private school, they do their best to do that, okay? Because they think that it's the only way they have kind of to secure the future of their kids, because there are no other things. So education is really a big issue in Lebanon. And some would even say, and would characterize the situation, that the Lebanese invest all of his income into sending his kids to school because it costs so much, okay, and to the best universities that are in Lebanon, because it's the best migration card that they give to their kids. And this is terrible, okay? I know it's a caricature, it's not, we cannot generalize it, but it's also a way to try to understand the situation. Why people do thrive so much to put their kids in the best school. So we'll find people selling their lands, the land that they inherited from their families and so on, so that they really do whatever they can to put their kids in the private school. And the state isn't investing anymore enough in the public ones to make them evolve and so on.
It's an instrument of fragmentation.
Yeah. So in the 60s, when my mom, 50s and 60s, when my mom was teaching, so some institutions were placed were developed by the government to help public teachers, to progress, to learn, to acquire new knowledge, and so on. So the state was involved at some point, and now a little bit less. It has less the capacity, I think, to do it. So public institutions are kind of losing the war against private institutions.
And there is no.
But sorry, with a small remark, that you cannot say that also for the universities. So we have a Lebanese university that is a public one, that maybe in some of its faculties and departments, I mean, they're not all the same level, okay? But you still can find some of the faculties and departments there that do perform in a very, acceptable level.
Catholics by Catholics and Protestants by Protestants and liberals by liberals and that kind of thing. We also learned that the only country who had the same system were the Lebanon. And is there still some impetus that, for instance, the Christian community has some feeling of responsibility to poor Christian kids to take them with them,
Yeah.
how you would to call it?
Yeah.
Is there some impetus in this field?
Yeah. The target of those Christian schools, because it happens also in other communities and so on. So yes, it's first of all, so you'll have for the Sunnites, you have the Ma'asid, for the Christians, you have other foundations that they want to secure learning for their community. And some even tried to secure social housing for their communities and other services. So even hospitals at some point started, but they're not now working only as that. But you'll find some of the hospitals called after the communities, and they were initiated and developed by the communities to initially cater for their communities. But then again, you have also another logic, which is the logic of competition that takes place between those community-based services and centers. So you have, it's a complex dynamic. You cannot only see it as a linear one, and some of them, most of them, are open to all. So my kids are in school, so yes, it is maybe a Christian school, but it is open to other communities. Okay, so and there in that school you will find people coming from different social background and level of income. Okay, so and it has internally its own process. So the rich one pay the scholarship of their kids, and they can select a program. It's ABC program,
Right.
through which they can fund the tuition fees of students who cannot pay. So this is the case of Jammour. They can. So when you put your kid there, so it's you, as a parent you pay, okay, but you have also the possibility to participate in funding, in financing, even if part of it, of the scholarship of other students who cannot pay it.
Is it
Okay.
open to refugee children too?
They need, it could be, it's interesting, it could be, and I think partially it is, but definitely, nevertheless, it is addressing a higher level income. I mean, they need to have at least a minimum basis, being capable of paying at least the third of these tuition fees. This is how it operates. And unfortunately, not all refugees can do that. So what happened in most of the villages is that they did dual shift for public schools. So most public schools in the Bekaa, in the north, and in the region that hosted the Syrian refugees, did a double shift. So in the morning, they catered for the Lebanese student, and in the afternoon and early evening, they catered for Syrian refugees. So you'll find some school doing this double shift, but who's funding the teacher to do this double shift? So there, it's not the state necessarily. Most of the time, again, it's international organizations. So they use existing structure, they use existing human, capacities, teacher, and so on. And the one who are willing to work additionally, so they service the Syrian refugees.
That looks a bit more positive than
Yes.
I would expect it to be.
No, I mean, you need to keep in mind that because the crisis has lasted for 9 years, there's a lot of adaptation that did take place. So they used to talk about resilience for the Lebanese community when Lebanese were facing crisis on their own, but also the Syrian have a high level, and together there were several level of having those two communities contributing, helping each other, and finding ways to adapt.
I have one question he may not hear.
Yeah.
Last one. How's the overseas community?
How is, sorry?
The overseas community of the Lebanon, who is 2 times bigger than, I believe you told us.
Yeah. Why?
Is he still loyal to the Lebanon?
No, a minority would stay. Minority would stay loyal to Lebanon. So I gave the sample of Sao Paulo, but unfortunately, I mean, I don't have to give an opinion on that. But if you go to Sao Paulo, most of Lebanese descendants, they don't speak anymore the Lebanese language. So they kept. We joke about that. They kept the tabbouleh, so just some food and things like that. So lately, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs tried to put some pressure on the Lebanese government and other institutions to try to have the kids of the second, I think, and maybe even the third generation, potentially, if they want, recuperate the identity, the national identity, the Lebanese. But unfortunately, it was done for political reasons, because they knew that a certain group would then be the one who would try to recuperate it, and then they will vote for them to keep them in power, and not really done because it's fair and this is how it should be done, you know. And also because some of the Lebanese diaspora, so the economy in Lebanon is enduring a lot, and maybe has been able to sustain itself in spite of the crisis for the past few years, because there's an influx of money being injected by this diaspora. Some of it doesn't, I mean, especially the one who has fled to, who is working, that is working in the Gulf countries, didn't leave Lebanon completely, okay? So they keep sending money for their parents, their families, their kids, and so on, their brothers, so for their family, and this is kind of helping the economy to sustain itself. So again, I mean, the diaspora and the migration issues are important, but not only from the social point of view, but also for the economic impact that they might have, and for the political one also.
So you just said that it was like the first part of the day it was local kids and then it was refugee kids, right? In schools.
In schools, yes, in some schools.
But doesn't that fuel
they
segregation?
accepted this double shift.
But doesn't that fuel segregation? Isn't that like it keeps a boundary in a certain way? And of course, locally, like speaking from what we learned here, it's the grandkids of the kids that have been moved to Lebanon that will be successful. Like the grandkids of the kids that are there now.
Yeah, it takes 2 or 3 or 3 generations
2 or 3.
before things.
Exactly, but if there's such a strict boundary when you're this young and you're just trying to get education, doesn't that improve segregation in a certain way?
Sure.
So
sure.
they should be kind of blended together, right?
Blended.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, keep in mind that most of those refugees have entered Lebanon illegally, and so they cannot really register. Plus, the second point is that we have still till now each year saying and thinking that the crisis will end next year. So we have not really integrated in the system. So this is something different. Most of migrants that came to the Netherlands came with a clear will, I believe, to stay for medium and long-term period. While in Lebanon, some at least of the Lebanese have this illusion that this will change completely, okay? So they're not really working in the sense of integrating them. So it's just containing the situation and still thinking that things will completely shift and change in few months or in 1 year at a time. So it changes completely the way you apprehend and you deal with things.
Think of the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon.
Yeah.
We call them refugees. How long have they been there?
So since 48, so it's 3rd and 4th generation in some cases. And yes, most of them do contribute to the Lebanese economy. They do contribute now to the Lebanese culture. I mean, they're completely a part, even though we try keeping them in camps and so on, and out of sight, and dreaming and thinking that they will leave. But nevertheless, it has endured. I mean, yeah.
So you feel bad for the Syrians who have been there for 5 years. There are Palestinians who have been there since 1948.
Yeah.
And
they
living
are
in
still-
camps and not allowed to work.
Yeah.
And not accessing necessarily all the services, schools and hospitals, so not benefiting from any social welfare that would be given from the Lebanese state, and they're not entitled to work, they're not recognized as a formal workforce, so they need to work in the black market, so they're much less paid and so on. It's a
And it doesn't go back into the economy.
yeah, and it doesn't necessarily being re-injected in the economy, and they have their own kind of security force. So it's the whole system that is in a parallel way, and it has been lasting for now 60 years, 56 years. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was recently in Morocco, and there they have the system that a refugee comes in and they are being helped to get a house and work and the whole system. In Lebanon there are way more refugees, of course.
Yeah.
But what about finding the work and everything? There's no service to
Yeah, some of those international donors and agencies at some point did provide each family that arrived to Lebanon with kind of a credit card. So for example, $150 per month, I'm not sure about the amount, plus aid, so they distributed food and so on, and clothes and services. But again, that was done in the logic that was temporary. But what happened is that a big chunk of the workforce within the Syrian refugee realized that actually they could compete with the cheap labor existing in those agricultural areas and rural ones. And they went even beyond that, because initially we always had Syrians who came and contributed with agricultural activities, but those were seasonal labor. Now they started a few years ago opening shops, contributing but it was always in informal sector, okay, but directly competing with the Lebanese one, because they're not registered, they don't pay taxes, they're cheaper, okay, and they're paying less. So for example, they kind of co-share houses, rooms, and so on. So they tend to spend the least they can spend in Lebanon to try. This is normal and logic, because they need to send a part of their money to their families. Some have still some families or large families in Syria, extended families in Syria. So yes, there's this economic competition, and it's piling up because a lot of Lebanese. So now you will discover in some villages, it has been undergoing for a few years, they put signs in some villages that Syrians are not allowed to walk in the village after 4 or 5 in the evening, because there might be some incidents. And during the past few weeks, there have been a lot of pressure to check all those informal shops that were operated by Syrians, and to pull them out, to stop their activities by force. Okay, so this dynamic now is happening, and definitely also you'll have a lot of political recuperation behind it. But I can tell you that the discourse of aggression towards the Syrian refugees has been increasing lately. Okay? And we don't know where it might lead, if it can go really out of control and lead towards something.
Well, you actually answered my question a little bit.
Thank you.
But yeah, my question was, in Holland, the local people are very divided, like in 50-50. 50% says refugees are welcome and we're going to help you and we love you, and 50% says go to your own country, we don't want you here. But my question was, how is that in Lebanon? But you already answered it a little bit.
Yeah, we need to keep in mind, I always say, I was talking about that with Robert a few days ago, I'm the son of a Syrian refugee.
Right.
So this seems a little bit bizarre. So this Lebanon has always been built through different waves of refugees, coming from Syria, coming from Palestine, coming from Iraq, coming from so many from other provinces that were under the Ottoman rule. Okay, so we do have that in our culture, and this came and it did contribute up to a certain level to the economic success of Lebanon. So also those refugees, they didn't all come and live in tents. Most of them came with activities, knowledge, know-how, networks, and so on, and they did contribute in building the country substantially. Okay, so this is why it's split. So you have part of people saying, no, this is normal and it could be beneficial to our economy, and these are our brothers and we should really help them and work with them and so on. And you have some other people who are kind of afraid. But again, you have to put it in the communitarian perspective, because it's also, unfortunately, a question of communities. So the majority of the Syrians who fled to Lebanon are Muslims. So it's again a question of community. And the Christian community in Lebanon is kind of becoming more, and so it's becoming a minority more and more, while during the French census that I talked about earlier in the 20s, they were supposed at least to have the majority, and this is why they gave them the presidents of the republic, and the chief army and so on. So major position because they represented the majority. So, and even within the Muslim community, so you have a clash between Sunnites and Shia, okay? And so even the Shia Muslim are not looking at this major influx of Sunnites coming from Syria in a good eye, you know, they're kind of fearful that it will change the balance internally and so on. So again, all these layers have to be taken into consideration. So Lebanese
But
don't agree.
basically, it's fair to say that this country is.
I keep going back to the whole part of it being a rural area and a lot of newcomers coming in. Isn't it important to bring a growing opportunity for all parties involved? So it sounds super dramatic, and I always am all that person with the very big ideas, but wouldn't it be the best option to have a opportunity for everyone involved, so local people from Lebanon and new refugees, to grow in that area, make that area grow as a more functioning or better functioning area?
Yeah.
That would be the best, right?
Everything has to be integrated, everything has to be together, and everybody has to, you know. And while you have a very interesting perspective on that, and that there is such a thing as a fragmented society, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. So maybe we will have to re-invite you to share this with us. So for now, we're going to leave it at this. Thank you very much for your contributions.